Hey, I'm Quack.
And I'm Co.
And this is the Board Game channel where every video is 10 minutes or less guaranteed. And today, we're bringing you a first impressions review of Tiny Epic Vikings.
Tiny Epic Vikings.
Or
Tiny Epic Vikings.
some have called it.
Tiny Epic Prototype.
Or others have called it.
Tiny Epic Blood Rage.
There's a few different names floating around, not that I'm associated with any.
There's a gameplay over on his channel. You can check that out. But basically, this
and a preview video.
This is a short Tiny Epic game, and the newest version of the newest game in the Tiny Epic series, involving 3 ages of bloodshed and drafting and actions. You're basically going to be drafting cards every single round, then playing those cards to cascade off these symbols on those cards. You're trying to be mindful as you take cards what you're going to be using and what combinations you're going to be creating just by the very nature of the cards in your hand. But then additionally, as you start taking control of various areas, you're also going to be earning more tokens and symbols from the areas you're in control of that can lend themselves to your cards. You're basically creating this tableau of what your special areas are, what you're strong in, as you go for a combination of bloodshed, of fighting, of area control, of gathering resources, of building buildings, of building out your fleet. Just a whole bunch of building and actions and just taking over and slowly deploying your Vikings into different areas, being mindful of the loss conditions in battle, because sometimes you want to lose, be mindful of the win conditions, be mindful of gathering this plunder over here, both for the end game points as well as the in-game resources, and then rinse and repeat that general construct across 3 rounds of play, and that is Tiny Epic Vikings.
I mean, area control and drafting, 2 of the terminologies that our group, and you and
Yes.
Shira specifically, absolutely love.
Yep.
Now, I, for one, am actually really impressed with, and I'm usually impressed by Tiny Epic with the amount of stuff they shove into their game boxes. It doesn't always elicit a game that I love, though. And I'm very impressed with how small and accessible this feels, while still actually packing a pretty heavy punch when it comes to like the drafting and the squabbling rules. There's a lot of value in the cards, there's a lot of fighting over victory points, and victory points can be won either, like you said, by fighting for these cards on the outside, which could be kind of a surprise win, or a big point swing by actually battling for control somewhere on this main map.
Yeah, I agree completely with what you said there. The idea that, for me, Tiny Epic games I've never played a Tiny Epic game I haven't liked. Never played one I didn't like.
But Western was...
I didn't play Western, so I have to play Western
It's
now.
based off poker, and I don't know poker very well. This is not the point.
I've played a bunch of the Tiny Epic series games. I think I played 5, maybe 6 of them. I played Defenders. I played the first one, Kingdoms.
Galaxies is
I played
brilliant.
Galaxies. I was okay with Galaxies. I played Quest.
Tactics is a lot of fun.
I played Dungeons. I have not played Tactics yet. So I've played like slightly above half of the Tiny Epics games. And in general, I have always found with those games that they give me a good experience, one that is solid, one that is incredibly impressive with the amount of game they managed to give you at the price point and the shelf space and the size of the box. And I've always felt that they try to be epic in a system and a size that isn't meant to be epic, and end up being a good game, but none that have stuck around. Always a good time, none that have stuck around. I find that this one, and one play in, so strongly first impressions. One play for me.
I'm a few plays in, and I do have some thoughts on that'll be important.
Maybe it's just the drafting, maybe it's the area control. This one is really solid. I have nitpicks, I have complaints, but this is the first Tiny Epic game I've played that I believe I will be keeping in my collection. I'm curious what the final game will be like, and keeping is always loose. Doesn't mean necessarily forever, it could mean for a year, but it's I want to play this again.
They also could do the classic Tiny Epic thing where it's 1 Tiny Epic box, and then 3 Tiny Epic box expansions, and then 1 full-size playmat.
Yeah, I'm not getting the playmat. This does not need a playmat. I'm sure they'll have one because it's a great way to sell like a shelf space and a thingamajig.
Yeah.
I don't need the playmat. I want the expansions though. I want to see where this goes. Every time I've ever played a Tiny Epic game, I've gotten my multiple plays in almost out of a sense of diligence. I have to try this. I have to see where it goes. I have to see what I'm missing. I have to try the expansion they threw in.
Sure.
This is the first Tiny Epic game that I'm excited to dive back in. I want to play it again. I want to see how I can combo more, how I can cascade those symbols, how I can take over the board, how I can draft better, be more mindful of the way you're going to screw me here at the end, being more mindful of the way I should go for some of these earlier. I sat there till the end of the game thinking I'd be able to get these in the second and third round. I won the whole game. I went for a different strategy. I think I was the only one who built multiple boats. You guys flooded the board with temples. There's a lot of strategy here, but with nitpicks, I'll let you talk for a sec before I get the nitpicks.
So the stuff that I like a lot right now is the asymmetric powers when it comes to winning or losing a battle. If you join a conflict, it's not always to actually resolve a conflict in a positive way to yourself. You could throw a conflict just to get a positive effect of one of these gods, and I find that works really well. It always makes me question what cards do I want to use in what ways. The amount of variable ways to sequence this puzzle and the drafting in this is really fun. Alex took way too long on every one of his turns because there's actually something here worth engaging in. And the big puzzle for me is the fact that your runes that are given to you by controlling islands but also are given to you by playing out a sequence of cards, can change and adjust in a way that make it so you could play a card that lets you take over an island, lets you gain a rune, that lets you take the special action, then take a house, play it up there. There's just this whole little interlocking kind of mini programming. And that it's really well done, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I like the sequencing. The sequencing is really what does it for me. It makes the drafting. For me, drafting is a mechanic that is all about picking not just what you want, but what you're handing to others. And the fact that the combat aspect on the top of the cards has its own separate puzzle from the cascading benefits, it means like I said, I took forever. I took forever because I was like, I want certain cards. I want certain combos. Yep. I don't know if I'll get that extra blue rune that will help me cascade this benefit. Plus, I'm handing you a 12 strength card. I just like drafting, and I like the way that this game lets you have cool moves. The way you could trade in those houses you've earned to take an extra action and suddenly have a 2-rune shift mid-game. It's just very satisfying.
You didn't win by a crushing blow. We were actually all most of us, very close to where we needed to be in the game. And a few extra decisions or a little bit more insight from multiple plays, I think, would have swung it one way or another. Now, some of the stuff that I'm not sold on, I don't think if you're a 2-player, which I know a lot of the Tiny Epic games actually work really well at 2 players, unless over on the Kickstarter they announce some type of module or expansion or shift to the core game system. It's a drafting head-to-head skirmish game. Like, it's a drafting area control game at that point, and I'm sorry, I haven't seen one in the industry that does that very well at 2 players.
Supposedly Inish, depending on who you are.
Supposedly Inish. There's also, like, arguments around, like, the programming nature of Runic and stuff, but I don't think it does it well. I don't think it's different from the rest of the majority of the genre on that case. But keep that in mind. It's not going to solve your 2-player problem.
I actually think that 3-player might be the sweet spot for me. I'm curious because I hear you're on 2 players. My concern with 4 players is that the game...
It's a bit more chaotic.
It feels a bit more chaotic. There's too much stuff going on, and things can change way too quickly between your turns, and you can have that sense of agency of, look at the cool things I did, can be torn apart, but not because other players are better, just because there's 3 other players at the table taking your actions away. So
3 and 4 players, I don't think I would ever turn down, especially because it's bite-sized. At 60 minutes, probably 45 if you know the game. That's a great play experience. Yeah, and I think for me, the thing that I'm really worried about, that I need more plays under my belt, and I don't think there'll be a review over my channel on this because it depends if I get more plays in before the Kickstarter's done, but how well my videos do.
I really feel this one needs a bunch more plays. Like, I have a bunch of concerns, and the concerns need a lot more plays for me to really iron out, but one of those concerns is that final end game swing, that last round of the game, there's so much shifting. If you watch his gameplay video, go to Quackalope, check out the gameplay video.
I don't know that there's a lot of point shifting.
I think there's a ton of point
shifting. Because you lost a ton of control and then still got it back.
But that's a ton of shift. That means the sense of hey, look at what I've built is not there. It's a sense of you took it all away from me, I took it all back, and ta-da, we ended up right where we started. Gotcha. There's too much shifting at the end with not enough time to mitigate around it, that I am concerned that I'll enjoy the full puzzle, and at the end of the day I wonder after 5, after 6, after 10 plays, will I feel that I actually have a sense of agency over the end game? Or, like perhaps Kemet before, do I feel that it can come down to just randomness of the end game and how it plays out, and it might be less satisfying. Not satisfying, but might be less satisfying.
The only other major concern I have is the lack of, other than these, the lack of core difference in the game-to-game experience. Yep. Meaning, depending on how much I'm playing this may be one where I introduce people to an area control drafting game and then very quickly graduate them to a Blood Rage or to an Inish, just because this gets a little samey.
This is one, I completely agree with you. This is one where I'm very strongly, I said this during the gameplay multiple times, I'm very strongly I wonder what they're going to have for their extra side box.
Yep.
More gods is nice, but it's not enough variety. The cards are great, but unless they start adding more symbols, it's the same sort of puzzle. And then the question is, what changes it up? Do you have your own individual player powers? Do you have spots on the board that give you rewards? Do you have some of these giving you actions?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things they possibly could do. I'm intrigued about all of them. I don't know where this goes. For me, this is moving to final thoughts. We have a minute left or so. Moving to final thoughts and all that. I don't rate first impressions, but I sometimes choose what to say where I think it's headed. I think this is headed towards a 4 to 5 for me. I think. The biggest concerns for me are the end game and the variability. Those are where I wonder how it settles when I'm 5 plays deep. But it's easily the first Tiny Epic game that not only am I going to have in my collection, I'm excited for the next plays. I want to dive back into it. I want to experience it. I want to try 3-player. I even want to try 2-player and see how that head-to-head plays out.
I think based off of just this, without any other little modules added in from the Kickstarter, which we know they're going to be, this would be a 3.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah.
Once we get those modules in, once we theorize about what might be coming down the road, I think this lands around a 4, just like you're saying. It's so good. There's just a few of those caveats that make me decide whether or not, like all the Tiny games, Will I choose something other than it, or will I choose it?
Yep, and that's basically our time.